There you go. Right. Well, I think we'll kick off. So, Justine is a friend and former colleague of many years ago. The details of how we ever got to get to work together, I can't quite remember anymore, but I know they were ridiculously stupid. I mean, they were just one of those things that shouldn't have happened, but did. And we had a few adventures together. And when I'm looking around for people who might be able to contribute to this thing of something I've learned, she sprang to mind. So didn't hesitate to say yes. So over to you, Justine, to do whatever you want to do. Sure.
Okay. Well, thanks. It's lovely to meet you all. And it's so great to just connect with Steve again, to be honest. It's been a while. I have been out of the touch since before COVID with nearly everybody. So it's really great to see you again. He might not remember, but I remember very well when we really started working together and becoming friends. And that was, I was working for an organization called Viva in the UK. I was working for them, but based in South Africa. And we were doing all sorts of things around human trafficking. And Steve had come out once and we'd chatted about a few things, the DVDs that he was creating. And we were like, it'll be so nice to do one on human trafficking and this and that and the next. And we had a lovely chat and all went our separate ways. And I came out to Oxford to visit with Viva, and they told me, well, your contract is up and we don't have any more money to do more with you, even though we would love to keep you on. And there I was sitting kind of without a job, you know, with a calling and things ongoing and everything rolling in the right direction, but no longer with a salary. And I think they sent me, if I remember correctly, they sent me to go and do a talk in Wales. Was it Wales? Where your sister was. Was it your sister? Where his sister went to a church, this white church on a hill. And I did this talk about children at risk and about trafficking and about all these things. And she ran back to Steve and says, I've met your Justine. And somehow out of that, Steve comes back and says, well, why don't you come and work for us for 2 years? Or for as long as it takes to get human trafficking into our DVDs and get it distributed in South Africa. And just like that, you know, from one part to the other, all of a sudden I was re-employed and Steve and I were working together. And it was one of those miracles that just happen in your life. And that was really one of the miracle moments of my life, was that little connection, because nothing else would have happened if that hadn't happened. I would have gone back into corporate and my life would not have been changed. So that said, that's kind of my introduction. And what Steve asked me to talk about today is, what have I learned? And I think that was the question that was posed. And I thought about a couple of things that were easy. I thought about a couple of life hacks, you know, some stuff that would be fun. And then I just thought, I just can't do it. I have to actually talk about, you know, what I really have learned. And what I have learned, what has become my number one, is to prioritize people. And, you know, I may be talking to all of you are friends of Steve's, then you might already have this down. But what I do now to put that as my number one is I have a to-do list that is crazy. I have 5 to-do lists, actually. I run a reserve, I have a family, I've got a lot of different things going on, and my list of items that I need to do every day is extensive. And I look at it and I'm like, and every day I take all of those lists and I list what I'm going to do today. And I write down the few things that I think I can get accomplished in today. But at the top of every list, I write down one, and then I write down people. And I kind of spend some time preparing myself to put people first. And the reason I have to do it is because when I'm so busy doing stuff, I can very often run around with my head down. And I never used to do that. I used to be somebody who always engaged with everyone. But I've just realized that I've become so rushed and so busy and so many to-do lists and so many deadlines that I don't take the time for all the people that I meet, all the people who phone me, all the people that are on my heart. So to write down number one and put people, and to say to myself, just be open, hear people, see people, understand you're going to meet people in queues, people are going to come into your office, people are going to phone you, and they're all wanting something else. But I need to give them my attention. I need to give attention to people first and not to things and not to doing things. And I was like, it's a challenging thing to do when you've got a hell of a to-do list, and one of the consequences is that things don't get done when they're supposed to get done. So I had to make quite a big decision that if I'm going to do this, that it's the stuff that I have to do is still going to get done, but it's going to take a little bit longer to get done. And everybody in my life, from work to home to everyone else, is just going to have to deal with that. If that document isn't on that desk today because somebody came into my office and I needed to give them my time, they'll get it tomorrow. And thankfully, I don't do stuff that's life or death. So most people can wait until tomorrow for me to finish whatever it is I need to finish. And this morning I was like going over it and thinking, is this the right thing to share? And then this Fridays are our busiest days. And I had like inundated with people, and one lady rushes in and it's nearly 12:30. And I'm like, I must go back because I've got a 1 o'clock that I've got to get to, I've got to Skype with Steve. And she needed to just get some stuff scanned, and I'm standing there with her and there's other people coming in and out. And then I thought, you know what, I have to remind myself about what I'm going to be speaking about today. I'm like, people first. So I just calmed down and I looked at her and I said, how are you doing? And I just spent a few minutes asking her a few questions. Just while we were scanning, I just gave her a bit of my attention. And the next thing, she just started sharing how her husband's just been diagnosed with cancer, prostate cancer, and they've come here to Justine just to deal with the news and to try and see how they're going to cope. And she was just needing a moment with somebody to have a little bit of a heart-to-heart and to get it off her chest and a little bit of compassion. And I could see that she was actually quite thankful to be able to just tell somebody in this environment what was going on, because they're also staying on our reserve, and I think she's scared now all of a sudden. And I was like, yes, this is the right thing to talk about. This is it. Even in the midst of the chaos, try and put the people first. And I don't do it all the time. I don't do the right thing all the time. I used to have a lot more time and I just don't anymore. Maybe you guys do have more time. And, in that case, when someone's on your heart and you think, sure, I haven't spoken to that person in a long time, or I wonder how that person's doing, don't just go on to the next task of making lunch or, organizing the bookshelf or doing something else that's on your to-do list. But stop, pause, put people first, say, right, I'm going to phone up that person and find out what's going on in their life, Maybe someone needs to have lunch. Maybe I need to talk to the guy standing behind me in the queue. It's a very South African thing to do. We talk to everybody, so, we're used to that. But, there's so many people who cross our paths every day. And if we take the time to be prepared that each one of those people is far more important than our to-do list or our task for the day, it's going to enrich our lives so incredibly. And I have hundreds of stories, but Stephen has even more hundreds of stories about how that is true. And I think it's a personal challenge at the moment, just because my life's become so inundated that I run around like a headless chicken and I'm not actually paying attention. And so I put it as number one on my to-do list, and I read my to-do list every 5 minutes because I'm going down it. And then I remember to prioritize the people. Look them in the eye, hear what they're saying, watch their body language. If you get a moment to engage with the till lady who's tired and you're there with your bread and your cheese and your milk and you just want to go home and carry on with the next thing, and, spend a moment making her day and then move on. And, that is something that I am learning. And that is the thing that is kind of at the top of my list at the moment of priorities to learn. I'm not saying I do it perfectly, not at all, I don't even come close, but it's changed my life. since I started. My first year here on the reserve was crazy. I had a 3-year-old, I had a 16-year-old stepson and a 3-month-old baby and a new job, and nobody had done anything during COVID for a year. So I had 2 jobs to do instead of 1. And a new town to get to know, and just a new everything. And that's why life became hectic. And so I'm busy recalibrating, and I'm busy trying to put first things first. And after I've achieved this whole thing of slowing down, and people must not wait until it's done for it to be done, and I start putting people first, and then after that I'm going to start seeing how I can actually start helping people again, which is what I used to do and what I used to love. So it's been a lovely season of having family and being kind of hidden away during COVID. And now I'm getting myself ready to just be there, not only for the people I meet randomly, but for the people that I choose to meet. Stephen knows we've done a lot of charity work and a lot of work with all different types of people and for people. And there's just nothing like it, So my heart is yearning for it again. It's what I want to do, but I'm not willing to go there until I know I'm ready. I know I've got the capacity inside me to do what I need to do. So that is what I thought I'd share today. I don't know if it's what you were expecting to hear from a little South African white girl sitting in Joburg, sitting in Hoedspruit just above Joburg on a game reserve. But I must say, it's interesting being who I am sometimes. The one and only time I was ever deported from a country, it was Myanmar. And I had been talking to a lady who had organized me to come, and I'd been Skyping with her like this, and we'd made all these plans, and I was going there to help children at risk. And I arrived at the airport, and I got to immigration, and my contact, the lady I was talking to, was waving at me on the other side of the glass. And I stood in front of the person at immigration. She says, "Where's your visa?" And I said, she didn't tell me I needed a visa. She said, "I'd be fine." She says, "No, ma'am, you need to have a visa. You have to go, you have to get out." I said, "No, come on." She said, "No, you have to go back to Bangkok, do an online visa. You'll get it in 24 hours, get on the plane and come back tomorrow." And she had 2 people escort me out and back onto the plane. And what had happened is my contact had seen a white lady in the NGO world and had assumed that I was British or American. And British and American people don't need visas to get into Myanmar. The last thing from her mind was that I was some little South African with a green number passport. And so she got quite a shock seeing me escorted back onto my plane and off again. But being South African has got me into a lot of trouble over the years. But it's also the fun part of me that knows how to just live life in the wild a little bit and get a little bit out of the box from time to time. Hey, Steve. So yeah, that's who I am. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to chat. But otherwise, that's all I really have to share.
Well, I mean, you asked me what I was expecting. I always know never to expect anything because it's always a surprise. Thank you for that, Justine. I'm going to throw it open for comments or questions. I mean, the whole thing of prioritizing people is a bit of a theme of these sessions, actually. So you feed into what other people have already said. But over to others. Any comments or shared experiences or questions for Justine?
Justine, I was really impressed with one point you made early on, which is that you write lists, as we all do, but you make this point of saying people at the top. And it's so easy, it must have been at first, so easy not to do that. And then, of course, you do everything else. To actively kind of force yourself into it by writing those words at the start, I thought was really impressive. I've had this. I mean, I'm nearly 70 years old, and so I've met a lot of people, and in various jobs and various circumstances. And I've always had this thing that you can't stay in touch with everyone.
Mm.
And you know, people are acquaintances, they're friends or whatever, but you can't stay in touch with everyone. And I think maybe I should readdress that. Why not try a bit harder? I think, funny enough, I got a call from somebody who lives in the south of France yesterday, who I used to work with, and he was just driving to Carcassonne to pick his partner up from the airport. And he said, "So I've got an hour. I'm in the car. I thought I'd give someone a call." And we haven't talked for a while, and I was so pleased by the fact that he called, even though it's equally my fault we hadn't spoken for such a long time. You know, it just kind of, what you said, struck home.
Yeah. Oh, nice to hear. Fantastic.
I've got so many things that are going through my head. But one of them is our friend Clive, who complained to me. I think most of you know Clive, actually, but he complained to me a few years ago that he'd met somebody really interesting on a train or a bus, and he said, the thing is, he said, I haven't got any time for another friend. I haven't got enough time for another friend. And it's a little bit what Peter was saying, that he invests a lot in his friendships. So to sort of follow up on that contact wouldn't just be a casual thing. It would mean time, his time. And I've always thought that was quite funny. It was a concept I'd never even considered, because I'll always try and embrace whoever happens to come across my path, not necessarily thinking that their expectations of that contact might be different from mine. But yeah, time is an important thing.
Yeah, I can go along with what Clive was saying, Steve, because a new friend phoned me this morning, and his background is his wife died about a month, 6 weeks ago, and then his brother died about 2-3 months ago. So he's I've come into his life to fill a void almost. But we get on famously together, and he's great company. But I've had to put him off today to perhaps tomorrow or next week, because we would need a couple of hours to catch up on things over the last few weeks. So it can be quite challenging to manage that time, but other people, perhaps a few minutes is fine, but you have to work out who needs what, and also to look after yourself as well, because you've only got so much of your emotion to give to people or share, and if you fall apart, then everything's gone.
And just to say, well, thank you, Nigel. To welcome Chris, and just to let her know that Justine's thing she's learned is to prioritise people, and she puts it at the top of her to-do list every day. That's the summary of what she said. So.
Thank you. I was interested in the little I've heard so far, and I think I might have mentioned this on one of the previous issues, and it's very cheeky to come in not even having heard what was said. However, I'm going to and that's just this idea that in terms of friendships, and it's only recently I've come across this suggestion that you might have friends that are friends for a reason, and then friends for a season, and then friends for life, and that the amount of I guess input into each of those types of relationship will vary, but it's possibly, first of all, you have to recognize which might be relevant.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've honed in on friendships just for no other reason really, but what Justine was talking about also is people who are standing behind you in the queue and who you're never going to see again. And I think one of our previous contributors, Alan, he was just advising us to smile at people. That was one of the things he's learned. He said it's free, it's infectious, doesn't cost you anything, and it leaves a legacy that's positive. And so even if that's all we do, it still prioritizes that person and hasn't taken, cost us more than we can afford to give in terms of time and so on.
Very true.
One of the things I found useful in terms of keeping in touch for a long time has been WhatsApp. You know, you can communicate in many different ways. You know, face to face, as we're doing now with Zoom or WhatsApp. And the great thing about WhatsApp is you can have the same conversation. It might take a day to have that conversation because you kind of check into it and check out of it. And if it's with 2 or 3 people, then you kind of join in for the parts. So you've got something to contribute, something to add, something you're interested in. So I must say WhatsApp has helped me to maintain friendships that I probably wouldn't have done in the same way, or certainly not to the same extent.
That's absolutely true. It multiplies how much you can communicate. It's fantastic.
Exactly.
I love it. I use it a lot too. I really do.
There's been quite a bit of conversation recently on the radio and elsewhere over here about the way that people are increasingly choosing not to talk to each other, whether by phone or, I mean, obviously if you bump into somebody, you speak to them in front of you, but saying that not only the younger generation, but a lot of people are now worried by trying to make or take a phone conversation because they just, well, it's just not part of their normal life. I can't sign up to that. I use the phone a lot, partly for work purposes, but also just, you know, to keep in touch with people like my sister and brother and other, you know. But it's an interesting thought that WhatsApp and that sort of thing are hugely useful, yes, but hopefully they don't actually replace the one-to-one conversation.
Yeah, I think that's important because I had a friend who, I can't remember what the issue was at the time, but I think she was off work through prolonged sickness and maybe had other issues. And she was saying, oh yeah, people are texting me from church, or but it seemed as though it was only texts. So nobody was ringing her and nobody was going round. And actually she felt completely isolated and desolate. And that's quite a few years ago now. So, you know, there are excellent things, as you say, about quick communication with WhatsApp, but I think nothing for me replaces actual conversation.
One of the things I found is that as a result of using WhatsApp more with various groups, because it maintains a level of contact that you, without it, I probably wouldn't have maintained. Occasionally, when we meet up for a pub lunch and, you know, and chat over. So it actually sponsors face-to-face contact as well as replacing it.
One follow-up to Christine's point about people avoiding telephone conversations on it. That was true when we first came to France. It was like, I'd do anything, ring somebody out. That was really because of the language problem. It's always harder on the phone to sort of follow and understand. But then there was a time at which I thought, well, if I'm going to make any progress in French, I really need to crack being on the phone. And I used to actually actively phone people rather than go and see them, whether it was a doctor's appointment or a friend. And my observation is that forcing ourselves to talk to people really took out, or certainly my kind of feeling about living here into a different level, because that sort of direct communication, you know, you can get away with text, you can look up the Google translation and text it and so on, but that direct, you know, it does something extra, even if it's not always possible, is what I'd say about that. Yeah.
And how is your French now? You like lovely and fluent?
Fluent would be a bit of an exaggeration. People say I've got very good French. It's sort of against the benchmark of Brits abroad, which is pretty low, of course. But
there it's well done.
I do it every other day. I do a TikTok video in French, and every other day I do it in English. So, and one of the people who listens to that for reasons that escape me, a French person, says that actually they've tracked my progress in the 6 months I've been doing it, and my French has improved great. And that was part of the reason I decided to do it every second day, was to force, again, like picking up the phone, to force myself to Because actually, they're all very friendly, and if I make a mistake, quite often they'll help me by saying, you know, you've insulted the French rather than complimenting them by using the wrong word.
And you say, but that's what I meant to do.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely.
Good.
I think
So nice.
another thing I might say, again, I apologize because I didn't hear the talk, but this business of direct communication with people, I'm, as most of you know, privileged to live in a rather lovely village in Sussex, and we've been here for more than 30 years now. And it's actually quite difficult to get from my house up to the village shop and back generally without having several conversations, which is great. Just don't have to be in a hurry when you want something from the shop. But I mean, the other day I went up and I actually was going to somebody's house, which is really close to where I live, but I thought I need to get some more steps in. So I went on a roundabout route around the village to end up at this person's house. And I got talking to at least half a dozen people on the way, you know, which was great. And it helps one to be what we are supposed to be, I think, in the moment. But it also means you've got to have a degree of flexibility somewhere in the system. So it isn't always possible.
That's true.
Is your mouth open for a reason, Nigel, or are you?
No, I'm just breathing in the air, trying to reflect on what's been said.
Yeah, quite. But
Yeah.
I was thinking of Justine's program particularly, and Fridays being her busiest day. I sort of was thinking of moving towards drawing this to a conclusion, unless there's other burning points or comments.
Just like to say hello, and it's really nice to see you after so many years.
Great to see you too. Seriously.
Still
This has been
remember
very
the
Still white.
special.
I still remember the first time I met you, which made me laugh so much because of my misperception of the person I was looking for. A South African lady in a red jacket, and I had a totally different image from the person that presented me you to me. All good fun.
So, Justine, do you want to say anything before we wrap this up? Thank you for coming. It's been very well. It's been, although I do prioritise people, it's been interesting to hear you say that, and so thank you for that.
Yes. Well, first of all, just thanks. It's lovely to see you all. Really, it is. Thanks for listening and chatting. It's made my lunchtime. This has really just been amazing. And what you said there about the flexibility that you need, I think that's what I was meaning when I say put it as a number one and prioritize people, is that it's not just a concept. It requires you to leave a little bit more space, leave a little bit more time, be a bit more flexible with your other deadlines. You know, it's priority because you actually have to make space for it. You know, that's what makes it a point, and not just a concept. And so I have tried to make my life quite flexible around the deadlines and the strictness and the so on, so that if I do get caught up in places, my life can expand a little bit to accommodate it. And that just took a little bit of practice actually to get in place. You know, I tell my son, if I'm not there at the gate when you come out, just walk up, you know, to the road. I'll get you on the way. You know, you just find that little bit, because you're right. You know, you can't have the principle without making the space and the time for it. It is an active thing, just like it would take to do a to-do list. Any other item on my to-do list would take time. People take time. And so it is about putting in the effort and the space for it in your day. So, but thank you so much, guys. I've enjoyed this very much, and I'm looking forward to being a person listening in on the group, to other talks. I'm going to become one of those people who joins the crew, and I'll definitely be seeing you on another Friday. So thank you, all of you, for your loveliness, and I'll be seeing you.
Thanks, Justine. I'll be in touch with all of you individually outside this meeting. I'm going to sort of guillotine it so we don't have that awkward period where nobody quite knows what to say. Just to say that on Wednesday next week, the next session in this whole knowledge exchange thing is the monthly climate change meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning UK time, 15 minutes only. If you happen to be free, you might be interested. Otherwise, it's the last Friday of next month for something I've learned.
Just remember, the UK clocks go back this weekend. That may or may not affect anybody's understanding of what 8 o'clock means.
Thank you very much. Yes, good point.
Good point.
Both, it's goodbye from me.
Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks very much.